And when I was walking in last night, we got here by midnight. So when we came in, I was telling the team that I know everywhere we started 30 minutes late. Everywhere. Everywhere. Different reasons. Not because of us, but because of the city specific. Somewhere it's the traffic, somewhere it's something else. But I was very clear, Mumbai is never late. Because that was my first experience when I came here. Post my masters from IIM Lucknow in 2005. My corporate journey started here in Mumbai with KPMG in Lower Parel, and it was a great experience because I'm a stickler of time. So for me to see a city where everything happens on time, and the biggest revelation was every train runs on time here. Right? If every train is on time, and people had the schedule like, okay, I'm going to catch 7:37, and I'm going to be at my destination at 8:03, and in my office at 8:03. And by 8:15 I'm on my desk. That level of planning is what Mumbai is. So we are glad that we started sharp at 9, independent of how many chairs are filled up. So maybe the rest of them who are coming in are not local Mumbaikars. So celebrating all of you once again. So a quick backdrop of why we are here together. So 15 years back, when we formally started our journey started out of a kind of an accidental conversation in a morning walk. So I've been a very active storyteller, as I was in my Twitter bio. Would go to schools, would go to neighborhoods just to read, just to have fun with children. Wherever there's a group of children under the age of 12, anything between 1 to 12 is where I will have a natural pull to just spend time with them. And that was going on since 1992 till about 2005. On a very active basis. But in 2005, when I started my corporate career in Mumbai, I started being invited by schools and places in Western India, not just Mumbai, but even other parts of the country in the Western India. And it got me excited. It got me because of two reasons. One, I think I felt naturally that I belong there. I belong to the classroom. It's finally you discover that actually this is your space. And second, the need was inviting. There was such a big need, and maybe I was fortunate to meet educators who are progressive, forward-looking, and they were inviting every new idea that we would take to their classrooms. Knowing our background that we are not educators, we come from very humble beginnings, grew up in Chunjunu in Rajasthan all my life. Till I went to Lucknow. It was a revelation, and that got me started. And 2008 accident that I was referring to is over a morning walk I ended up meeting the managing director of a pharmaceutical company in Delhi. It's called Merck Pharmaceuticals. And over a walk he was just kind of having a casual conversation that what's it that you think education should look like, and it ended up in that 45-minute walk that Merck wanted to set up Merck Institute of Science Education in India. And this is, I'm talking about 1st of December 2008. They wanted to set Merck Institute of Science Education in India. And Dr. Rao, the MD then, and his team decided to give us, as in me, the mandate, saying, we request you to take this responsibility to set up MICE. Now, I was still learning, figuring out, and for me to get such a massive assignment was again another revelation in terms of what's possible if you're keen. And what happened next was interesting. He said, I want you to raise the invoice. Because we can't give you the assignment without a formal contract. You'll get a contract and we start. But I never had a company. I was doing as a freelancer volunteer since 92. But then, as luck would have it, all my work in education would have this on the top of the board, Chintu to Chintamani, since 90. Every time. That I want to turn every Chintu in the country into a Chintamani. That was my slogan, my name, everything. So I had to raise the invoice. The simplest thing was go and Chintu to Chintamani Limited or something. That would sound funny. That's how stones to milestones took birth. That, okay, let's convert every stone into a milestone. And it's been a phenomenal journey. We are in our 15th year. And we have so far did only two things. In 15 years, we could just get to the second thing. The first was most children in schools were struggling to learn in English. Whether they were in Mumbai, Jhunjhunu, Kota, Muzaffarnagar, they were struggling to learn in English. Children were curious.
naturally children are curious, but where they were finding the stumbling block was the language barrier. And
And hence we said, how do we solve it? In a year's time, we ended up publishing our first paper, Why the Need to Teach Reading? Because we discovered through our work over the years that reading was the most powerful way and easiest way for children to hack the language. Maybe in a separate session we can talk about why I'm using the word hack the language, but that was the fastest way for them to become lifelong learners in English medium learning. And this resulted into coining us the first vision statement for Stones to Milestones in 2009 for creating a nation of readers. So by now we work with 1 million children in India and South Korea. Why South Korea? I think we had difficulty to build reading as a mission in India because everyone was looking for test prep. Wherever we said, can we solve reading in early years? No. Can you help with IIT entrance? No, I can't. Oh, you are an MBA, can you help with CAT entrance? No, I can't. I want to solve reading in 3 to 3, age 3 to grade 3. But we had a lot of resistance. I have some co-believers in this room who believed in us way back in 2009-10, and we continue to work with them. Thank you to each of you. I'm trying to make eye contact with as many of you without calling out specifically. Thank you so much. And then we said we need to make ourselves financially viable, is where we went into South Korea, saying this will help us become financially viable. But what it led to was a bigger discovery for us, which is our belief systems grew in exponential proportions. If sitting in India, if somebody coming from Junjunu and small town background could teach English to the developed world from India, I think the power of human potential
is unimaginable. And I think that's been the journey for the first 15 years. What
happened subsequently is 2009, India took PISA, right? How many of us are nobody will respond. How many of us are aware of these?
Not before, when you got this invitation, not then, much before that. Okay, quite a few here in Mumbai were aware of, and all this is data, right? We are documenting this whole event because it's not our yatra, it's our collective yatra. We'll come to it why I'm using this phrase yatra later on. So in 2009, India attempted the PISA test, the global test that several countries take up, and it's almost like a leaderboard, if I can call it, a leaderboard of country on effective education systems. You're scoring well on the significance of the PISA test, but we ended up coming second from bottom, right? Now
It threw up multiple realizations.
One was multiple questions actually. One was, is this the right framework for us to be tested as a country? And I think very quickly we got the answer that yes, and it can get better. It was not no. It was yes, and it can get better. Because once we start using it more, it will get better for us. The second bigger thing was, is this where we belong? Do we belong here, second from bottom? Right?
That shook us completely. We don't belong there. How many we are producing some venture. Dr. Senthil was in Paris when he was interacting with other country representatives. Second to bottom, right? Something had to be done. And as an educator who was committing his or her life to this journey, wanted to fix that. That no, we don't belong here. It took us some time to
understand. And then since
last 4 years as Stones to Milestone, we have been in active contact with the OECD team to see if we can be their national partner to begin the journey of PISA for schools in India. What is PISA? What is PISA for schools? That's the core agenda today. We'll come to that shortly. And finally, on 9th December 2022, we went live with our second baby after creating a nation of leaders. Our second baby is Excel-1, under which we are launching PISA for schools in India as a national service provider with OECD. And my co-founder for this venture is Dr. Senthil Kumran. I don't know.
Some of you have met him, but his and my relationship has been evolving over a period of time. It started with somebody I was
looking up to for everything, a mentor. Over a period of time, we became, partners in the journey in terms of helping situations together. And then today, we are truly partners wherein we are bringing PISA for schools together to the country. And thank you, Doctor,
for really pushing me,
saying that this is the right time. And when you hear him later in the day, he will actually explain why this is the right time for PISA for schools in the country. This is absolutely the opportune time for us. So with no much time that I want to take, I would love to get the session started and would introduce two of my guests here from OECD. So Tanya,
airport
we are the policy makers from that city. And after that, we get on to a flight to the next city. This is our fifth city, and Yatra ends here. Tanya is also accompanied with her wonderful colleague Nate. I would need one full day with Nate to understand how he's feeling. I'm still trying to understand.
Such a hectic journey for you, Nate. I can completely understand. Nate comes from Australia. He's a recent member. He joined OECD PISA for Schools team. Nate is
Predominantly an English teacher.
He spent substantial part of his career as an English teacher. Then he realized that without data, a teacher is incomplete. With data, teacher doesn't need anything else. And that's when Nate's journey for data started. And he worked with other organizations like Australian Council earlier, and now he's with OECD PISA for Schools.
So both of them are going to take the next session for us, because I don't want to talk about OECD when OECD's representatives are here. So I'm going to leave to them. We also have OECD's partner. So OECD is operating in there are 38 member.
Growing, I guess. So there are 38 member countries to OECD, the most powerful nations in the world, and the education vertical works with beyond the member countries also, like India has done. So there are almost 100 countries, and they can't be doing this by themselves.
So for PISA for schools, they have a partner, Janison, and we are very fortunate that Janison, founder and CEO, is with us today, and he's going to be with us for the rest of the day. He's joining the Yatra in Mumbai. I think he loves Mumbai so much. He ditched us, he didn't plan for.
Thank you, Wayne, for being here with us. So that's so what we are.
So what we are buying Yatra, right, and then over to Tanya. The team can help us with
the PISA for schools
is not a test.
it's
It's
a
it's a
diagnostic
diagnostic report against
global
global benchmarks, right?
and
And that is just first step.
the second
The second step is 80% of the work,
which
which
is
is how do I derive inspiration and insights
from PISA
from PISA for Schools
to
report
walk
to
forward.
walk forward on the excellence journey. That is what PISA for Schools is about.
And
And Yatra
is
is because we need to get the inputs from all the leading educators in the country, without which this will be absolutely incomplete exercise. So as you will experience the rest of the day, we are doing certain things with all 5 cities,
all the
all
documented work that we are collectively producing as 500 plus educators in
the country.
comes back to you at the end of the yatra by that. I would love to invite Tanya to take over, and Nate will give you a deep dive
Understanding in the brochures that you have got.
Few pages are empty note pages. You can take down your questions. We have the Q&A section at the end because a lot of questions that will get triggered in the first session will get answered in the second. So maybe you can keep knocking off them and see which are the ones left by the end of it. Thank you once again to everyone. And I think Mumbai really rocks because when we are starting the first real keynote session, we have got literally almost everyone who committed to be here this morning. Once again, welcome to all of you.
I guess it works. Yes, it works. I change it, but otherwise I will start. So thank you. But I will make a sign that you have to change. Would that be okay? Okay. Thank you. So thank you, Kavish. Thank you, Dr. Senthi, and thank you, everyone, for inviting us to come here. It's really a pleasure to be back in India again and back in Mumbai. And thank you all for coming. I see the room got full, so this is wonderful to see. So I'm delighted to be back in India, back in Mumbai in particular. Mumbai is a little bit of my city also. I spent a lot of time here when I was studying in Pune, which is just very close. So it's really great to be back. Actually, I think that I literally pushed Kavish and Dr. Senthil to sign for the visa for so that I can be back in India. And now we are on this journey together for the several years, I hope. So I'm Tanya, I work in the OECD. My role today is here to present you OECD, PISA, and PISA from schools from international perspective, and then, thank you. And then we will pass the rest of the presentation local context, and then that is all in the hands of Kavish. So now that all the technology works, we can start almost.
Screen को record करना है.
So the presentation today will be divided in 3 parts. It will be me who will tell you more about PISA for schools, what it concretely is. Then my colleague Nate will pass through the data. Responsible for that, and he's going to explain you what data actually the schools receive when they participate in PISA for schools. And finally, you will be back with me examples of how PISA for schools works in other countries. So let's start with what is PISA for schools. First of all, what is OECD? We talk about OECD and then we assume that everyone knows what OECD is, but I think it's a little bit of our colonial thinking that everyone knows about us, so I will actually explain what OECD is. OECD is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. After 10 years in OECD, I still get confused with what actually it means. But it is an organization which is membership organization. There are 38 member countries or developed countries like UK, Canada, Australia, Mexico, also Korea, and some others. As Kavish said, India is not part of the OECD, but it has its special status. It is a key partner country, which means basically that everyone in the OECD wants to work with India, although you are not a member country. And there are key partner countries like Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa. I think you can have us an idea why are those key member partner countries. We are Paris-based. We are lucky to be living in Paris and working in Paris. There are 3,000 of colleagues working in the OECD, out of which 200 are actually in Education and Skills Directorate. This shows that this is one of the biggest directorates in the OECD. And it shows actually that the OECD takes education seriously, which is a very positive understanding. So we are led by our director, Andrea Schleicher, father of PISA. I guess many of you already know him. He's like a rock star. Whenever he comes in a city, everyone knows Andreas is there. I mean, in the education field. So the mission of the OECD is better policies for better lives. It's a very nice mission, but what does this mean concretely? Concretely, it means that our mission is to help the governments, we work directly with the governments most of the time, to help them improve policies on how to improve their work in all basically domains of the governments, from finance, education, environment, health. We really cover all parts, all areas of work, all areas that actually could be useful and helpful to the government. We have around 500 publications a year, so you see we publish a lot. And many of those publications are actually free on our webpage, so you can check and download. There is absolutely a lot of information. Then OECD also provides economic outlooks for each member country and for also some partner countries. Great OECD stat webpage, which of course I'm biased, so I love that data, so I love this webpage, but it's really, you can have a lot of interesting data freely available on our webpage. So this is OECD. Now what is our directorate? We are working in 4 different pillars. Our work is basically divided in 4 different pillars in the education department. The main pillar, which we are a bit biased, but we think it's the most important one, is the PISA pillar, who is focusing on measuring outcomes. Main assessment, but there is also PIAAC. PIAAC is basically PISA for adults, so we do the same thing for the adults. And then there is TALIS, which is a survey for teachers. Second pillar is teaching and learning. So we have a group of colleagues who work on understanding how students learn and teachers teach. They have also different publications and which are all available on our webpage. Finally, we have a policy development implementation unit. They are only focusing on studying education systems around the world. So they are writing reports about how education system in one country is. We have nothing to do actually other than from that. And finally, of course, the point of education is to look in the future. So we have a and the future of education. All these different ideas of how the education is going to look like, how will be the classrooms in the 2030 or then further go on. So also very interesting things to see. So we explained what OECD is, what the Department for Education is doing, and then we said that measuring is one of our main goals. So this is like what are we doing? And now we have to think of why are we doing this? Why are we measuring those skills and what do we think matters? So skills for the 21st century are changing. What is needed in the 21st century is not the same skills that were needed before. Before, everything was not automatized as it is today. There was much less of AI. There was much more need for manual work, for automated work, and all these changes. Now what is needed more are social emotional skills, skills in creative and critical thinking. We need people who can adapt to new challenges, to new contexts, who can work in groups, who can be good team workers. So these kind of skills are the ones that we are interested in, particularly in OECD and in PISA. So PISA is the assessment which is at the national level, done every 3 years in 90 countries around the world. Here, this is talking about 2018 was the last PISA cycle that took place. Now we just finished 2022 and the data will be published in 2023. However, unfortunately, India is not part of it. You didn't participate in 2022 or ever before, ever after 2009, unfortunately. And we definitely hope that soon PISA will be back in India or India will be back. The PISA is the assessment that is taking 2 hours to complete. It's a quite demanding test. We really torture the students to get a lot out of them, to learn from them and to understand what are their skill levels. We are focusing on reading, mathematics, and science, but what is very important in PISA is that we are not measuring their, like if the student we're measuring if they know how to apply apply the knowledge. And this is the big difference between other assessments also. So we are really not asking students or anything similar. We are asking them really to apply in a creative and a new way those knowledge. Present in 79 countries, but in 2018, but overall there are more than 90 countries. Yes, but India is special, like our context is different, not sure it will work here, but we have 90 countries who participated in it, all of them, rich, poor, from all continents, all languages. So we can really adapt to all contexts, so be reassured about that. Don't doubt in PISA. It's been tested with existing already 20 years. We tested it in all contexts in the world. We can definitely adapt to India, and you don't have to worry that this test is not suitable for your context. Finally, what is unique for PISA is that we don't only look at the reading, mathematics, and science and applying the knowledge. We are actually looking at the whole context in which the student is learning. So we are asking, we spend 30 minutes with the students to learn about what is their background. Do they come from advantage or disadvantage family? How do they feel in school? What is their their learning experience? How do they talk? How do they iterate their? So all this learning environment for us is very important in order to understand where is actually their results in mathematics, reading, and science come from. What is their background? And in that case, we can also compare the comparable. I don't think there is a big use of comparing one country with a very low GDP with somebody who is super rich and investing millions in education if their educational environment is totally different. So what we try to do with PISA also is to compare the comparable. We take the countries who have, let's say, similar curriculum, similar student profiles, and then we see how do they act between themselves, how do they compare between themselves, and what can one education system learn from another. So we talked about OECD and PISA, but now we have to make a clear distinction between PISA and PISA for schools. So we explained that PISA is assessment which is at the national level, which provides data at the national level. So once your school participates in PISA, in international survey and provide data for your country. But you as a school, you don't get anything. So when we were, I was not even in OECD at the time, it was in 2010, I think, when the representatives of the schools came to our directorate and they said, like, it's all good, PISA is good, but we want something for our schools. We want something to give back to our schools who participated, who spend 2 hours, 3 hours with us filling PISA for schools, and they don't get anything out. So that's how PISA for schools was created. It was actually an assessment, and still is, an assessment that is at the school level. So every their school records about which Nate will talk about later on. So please don't make this confusion between PISA and PISA for schools. In a way, it is the same thing, but the outputs and the way it's done, it's much different. We are comparable, so whatever score in PISA for schools you get on your for your school, and this is but then also there is a part of exploring and acting. Because I think Kavish mentioned at the beginning, this is a journey. This is not just getting the data point, you finished your assessment, now you have your data, we are done. It's really not the spirit of the project. The project is designed for schools to be helpful to the schools. So that's why measuring is actually half part of the project. And if you talk to Kavish, he will say that it's only 10% of the project. But it is at least half because we provide you the data. But then we help you to explore this data and to act upon this data. And that is actually the utility of this project, is to make this data useful for you, and actionable,
but the problem
from
is
which you
कि
can learn
सरकार
and
है
compare
उसमें
and act upon. For example, in
if
the
I
report
if I ban to
many
write
examples
more
actually
right
of the data
सरकार
that you
head
receive. And the
कितना
point
है
is that with this data you can compare and you can
that's
see
why
where
I'm
you stand
avoiding
on the
that
international scale.
tell Gufran to
You will
move
see if your students are as motivated as they are in other countries. You will see not only how they perform in other countries, that you will know of course, but you will also see about their background, about their feelings, and how does this compare with other countries. At the last part of the presentation, I will give you concrete examples so you maybe have more idea of how it works in practice. This is just the theory part for now. And as I mentioned several times, but I will really repeat this another time because it's for us very important, it is not all about reading, but or it is about this general context in which your students learn. So PISA for Schools measures course motivation for self-efficacy, teaching practices, self-class satisfaction, relationship with peers, and all the other domains that I mentioned here. This is quite unique for PISA for Schools, and in general it shows that we give the importance to all this environment, the learning environment of the student, and not only to the final score. The learning environment itself. So this is where we can help because we can provide international data that can situate you where you are and that help you identify which are your strong or weak points. Some key facts about PISA for Schools. So we are testing 15 years old. We have also a lot of comments, why not 20 years old, why not 10, why not 18? It is 15, you have to accept it, this is not negotiable, this is how it is. Why it's 15 and not some other number, where you can imagine that PISA, as I mentioned, we have 90 countries who decide the destiny of PISA and who have to be aligned with their policies. So these 90 countries have to agree on because this is near the end of compulsory education in almost all of these 90 countries. So that's why we stick to the 15 and we continue to test the 15 years old. There are almost 10,000 schools that participated in PISA schools, and we're very proud of this number. We are traveling around the world and showing this number proudly, 10,000 schools. Then we come to India and people are laughing at us and they're saying like, that just 10,000, it's nothing, it's like a city here. But we are proud of this 10,000, however, and we are sure that once India joins and once you start signing in, we will end up with boosting these numbers and being even more proud when we go outside and give the number. Is impressive. You can imagine how much work it is to coordinate all that. It is SPs and 2 hour long test, so we really torture your students.
tell Gufran to move from there.
That you have to dedicate almost 3 hours of your time and their time to do this test, but it's definitely worth it. Then we are present in 15 different languages, including Chinese, Japanese, so different scripts we can cover all, so there is no problem with language at all. Currently in India, it will be offered in English. Hopefully, with the time we'll start adding all of your languages, multiple, and then our number of 50 will also be boosted in much bigger numbers. Finally, we are offering the test in digital delivery. Is providing our international platform provider services, meaning that the test is offered on this platform which works perfectly well in all conditions. It's not because we're here that we are doing publicity, it is really tested in difficult conditions, in rural areas who don't have even energy, even less internet. It worked all over the world, so we are confident that the test will without any problem connectivity during the whole test.
All right.
And this is the last slide for this part of the presentation. It shows, proudly shows our 15 countries who are part of the PISA for Schools. As you can see, there are really a variety, different variety of countries, different continents. Everything is included in our small project, and we are really happy with this country. I will now pass to my colleague who will tell you more about the data that schools receive when they participate in the project.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, is that better? Hey, there we go. Morning, everyone.
This is perfect.
It's such a pleasure to be here, as this whole country has been. But you know, last one we need to make it super special, right? My name's Nate. As Kamish said, I used to be a high school English teacher. I spent about 7 years in the classroom. And my journey from being an English teacher into someone who works with numbers and data at a large scale is something that I've been sharing, because people think, English teachers, what do they know about numbers? And so what happened was, in my career, I got put in charge of the English department of a school, and this school had 5 campuses. There was one metropolitan, all rural campuses that were very, very small. And when I say small, one of these campuses had only 15 students from year 3 to 12. So there were missing year groups. We had to put students together. And in these country campuses, more often than not, teachers who were not English teachers had to teach English. They were teaching outside their subject speciality. And because I was in charge, we were given a mandate from our board that all students in the school had to learn the same and be assessed in the same. And I figured out that I didn't know enough to be able to help my teachers, to be able to help these students. So I went back to study. And that's when I found that actually English teachers can do maths and can do maths well. And data, I learned that data was really, really, really important. Because in a classroom, a teacher has a personal relationship with a student. And they learn through observation. They know their students very well. But that data is largely qualitative. They know the student as a person, and they know the attitudes and the mindset of the students. What's missing sometimes is more quantitative data. Right? Where does this student sit in comparison with all students in my country? If I'm a teacher in a campus with 15 students, how do I get an objective understanding of what that student knows and can do? And so quantitative data and testing is the other part of the picture to understand the student as a whole. But teachers are really lucky because they have that personal relationship.
A school leader, a school owner, a principal. How do I know about every student in my school?
What do I use to understand where they are, what they need, and how we get them to the next level? And that's part of what Pisa for Schools is trying to achieve. We give you a school report, which is what I'm here to talk about. And the school report provides to school leaders information about all of the students in the school and helps you understand what the school is doing to help students move on. We have a sample report up on our webpage. You can go through it. There are also a few hard copies floating around. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through some of the key figures and the key types of data that the school report provides. The first part of it is this executive summary. This is designed to be an overview of all of the content, and it's designed to be able to be understood even if you're not a numbers person. Of course, there are some numbers. So
We test in reading, mathematics, and science. And you can see that there is an average performance of your school. One of the things about these numbers
is that they are on an objective scale.
We hear a lot of talk in assessment about ranking.
Particularly when it comes to PISA, everybody's talking
About country ranking. The thing about rankings is that everybody in the ranking wants to improve.
Right? And so if I'm at 9th out of 10 and I want to improve, I have no control over the other 9 countries on the same ranking. If we all improve at the same rate, my ranking won't move, but we will have grown. Right? If I move up to 6th, is that because I got better, or is it because 2 or 3 other countries got worse? I have no information from a ranking about my growth. So objective numbers, as on the PISA scale, are ways of setting goals for a school. I want to add 10% to that by the next.
How are we going to get there?
And it doesn't matter how other schools do. You will know whether your school has grown or not. And that's important to move towards excellence, which is what our Yatra is all about. Next to that, we put in 2 benchmarks as reference points. In most countries where we do PISA for schools, the country regularly participates in PISA. So we normally have a national benchmark.
I'll zoom out.
In India's case, the only data that we have from PISA is from 2009,
Okay.
and it doesn't make sense to
So one of the things that
you can provide as feedback to our partners Excel.
So you
One
want
is,
me to zoom
who would
out?
you want to be compared to?
Zoom.
Because when these reports come out, we're going to populate your country benchmark, either with a selected country that is a relevant comparison, or possibly even a group of countries. In a school system you'll hear about later, we actually compared their school system to the EU, so 27 countries, so this is possible. But for the next couple of slides, whenever I say your country benchmark, just think that's TBC, okay, to be confirmed.
LED panel.
And then we provide the OECD average as well. And so what this does is it gives you an idea about where your school sits in the bigger picture, which is another way of starting a conversation about where should we be and how are we going to get there. Underneath the numbers, we have a split by 2 different variables. We know from large-scale assessments that there is this stubborn trend where girls outperform boys on reading tests, and on maths and science tests, boys outperform girls. And that seems stubborn across cultures, across countries, and we see it every time we do a large-scale assessment.
You want me to?
So in PISA for schools, we do it for your school. We split the data, and we say, how are boys and girls doing in this school? What's their average performance? How far apart are they? And is that statistical? And it varies a lot from school to school. Some schools, you see no statistical significance between the 2 groups, which means that the girls and boys are doing the same.
it's a flip, where actually boys are doing
Really well in reading over the girls, and girls are doing really well in science over the boys. And that's some interesting information to start a conversation with school staff. You know, if our girls are excelling in maths, what is our school practices that's contributing to that? And can we share that with our other schools in our network? Can we learn from that and improve our school system, not just our own school? So it's a way of understanding whether your school is doing something really well that should be celebrated and shared. We also know from large-scale tests that socioeconomic status has a big impact on performance. Schools that have more advantage perform better in PISA, and schools that have less perform worse. Even within schools, we find that students from a more advantaged background tend to do better than students from a less advantaged background. So we take our school students, we split them into quarters, and we compare the top quarter to the bottom quarter to understand how big is that gap between your most advantaged and disadvantaged students. Is that gap significant, or are you actually able to lift up and help those kids beat the odds and bring them to a level that everybody can be very proud of? So we show that split in the socioeconomic differences. And again, it's a point for school leaders and school staff to reflect. You know, are we doing enough? Is this gap too big? Or, you know, if there is no gap, what are we doing right that we can help the rest of our schools community? Under the break, we get into the non-academic part of PISA for schools, which I think is almost more important. The first bit's on student engagement and feelings, where we highlight a few of the statistics from the student questionnaire about student experiences in the classroom. Okay. Do students experience noise and disorder? Do students have a good relationship with their teacher? Right? And this is the sort of information which you don't often get in standardised tests. A lot of tests focus just on reading, maths and science. But we know, as educators, that school
place of growth and belonging for students to discover who they are in the world.
Otherwise, we are missing a big part of their education experience. The bottom bit is on socio-emotional skills. So we look at curiosity, empathy, optimism, and a couple of others. And we also correlate those with other things like life satisfaction, general health, competitiveness. And we
Relationship between how our students relate to other parts of
performance. And again,
something which provides a better picture
of what environment the school is offering for students to grow in. So there's a lot of information in one summary, but it's not usually too hard to explain to people how to read it, which makes it a good communication tool. You know, your school is invested in this program. Here are our results. Here's what to celebrate. Here's what we need to ask questions about and have conversations about. Do. Then the school report moves into more graphs and starts drilling down into the data. This is a different way of showing the school's results compared to your country, to be confirmed, and the OECD average. What this graph adds is a visual indicator of distance, and it also shows you the confidence interval around the average. Because of our methodology, the school average has a little bit of measurement error. Okay? And so what this allows you to do is really visualize whether there is a statistically significant difference between your performance and the benchmarks. Your school, throughout all of the figures in the report, is represented by the green hexagon. Right? And in the band, that's the confidence interval around the estimate. And then if the dots sit outside that band, there's a statistically significant difference. So again, this is a communication tool. It's a way of visualizing the difference in performance and being able to understand whether there's a statistically significant difference as well. Just for the cognitive domain. The next level down is quite complicated. But I think this is one of the most important types of information we have here. So let me walk you through it. The x-axis on this graph is socioeconomic advantage and disadvantage. The y-axis is school performance. The green hexagon is your school's average. So what this is how the relationship between socioeconomic advantage and performance for your school. Then, another. So what these black circles are individual schools that took main PISA in the reference country. What you see is that there is a trend. This is what I was talking about before. More advantaged schools in PISA tend to perform more highly than less advantaged schools. And we need to think about fair comparisons. If your school is serving a population of students from a relatively disadvantaged area, it is not fair to expect those students to perform like students who have all the advantages in the world. We need context. We need to understand, for their level of background, how well are our students doing. And that's what the grey column is. The grey column are the schools that are likely to be serving populations of students like yours. They have the same level of socioeconomic advantage, so the students are probably similar in their backgrounds. And you're able to see in that column, how does my school
like me?
much fairer comparison? Yeah. Schools like me, with students like ours, are we doing okay? Are we doing great? Is there something we need to be improving on to make sure that we're giving our students the And this, for me, is the level of data that's the most powerful. I didn't talk about the black line, but the black line is just the relationship at the large scale based on the PISA data between socioeconomic advantage and performance. But it provides you an extra little shortcut for understanding the graph, because it's an expectation. Okay? Schools at this level of advantage are expected to perform at the black line level. If your school's above it, you're beating the odds. If your school's below it, there might be a little bit more work to do. There might be another explanation as well. But it's the catalyst for a conversation with your school community and stakeholders about what are we doing, what do we need to do to make sure our kids are getting the best. So it's really powerful, this level of data, and there's one for each of the domains. This is my last slide. And it's a shame, really, because we spent 2 slides talking a lot about the cognitive results. And I said that PISA for schools is so much more than that. And it really is. It's just that a lot of the figures look the same, so we can only really get one slide out of them, otherwise they just sort of blend into each other. This is an example of one of the questionnaire questions. And this one's about student self-efficacy in science. Self-efficacy is motivation. Why do you do science? Do you see it as useful for your future career? Do you do it because you're curious and love it? Because performance in a subject is different from a love of learning of that subject. But as educators, we want our kids to have both. We want them to be very high performing and very motivated to keep performing highly. And this is something that we can start to understand with reports where we've actually asked the kids for their voice. What do you think about learning science? What do you think about competition in your school? What's bullying like in your school? Does your teacher come and help students when they need them in your school? These are the contextual questions which can add a whole other layer of meaning to the cognitive data. Also provide catalyst again for conversations and questions, but maybe also solutions to the problems. Yeah? If you observe that your school performance in science is below what you would expect, given your level of students, maybe there might be a discussion to have about, well, they're low performing and they're also just not interested in science. Maybe if we can get them interested in science, we will see the performance follow. Maybe it's not about how we're teaching science, maybe it's about how we're communicating the love of science. And this could be a very powerful conversation to have in a school with them in that situation. So there might be clues for improvement in the context, the experience of the students in this. So I'm going to hand back over to my colleague now. Thank you for your time, and I hope you can see some of the value.
So the last part. Yes. So the last part of the presentation will be on the examples concrete. So I think you became expert in PISA and PISA for school by now, how much you talk here. But we give now examples of how it works in other countries, so maybe that will inspire you even more.
Adjusting the vertical.
There are different levels of action in different countries. So we will give you four examples in the following 4 slides. So first one is that you can act at the school level. That is something that is quite clear, I think, and quite evident. You will receive the school report that you saw and already lay out how it will be. So you can act at the school level, your own school, your decision, you act upon your data. Second part is at the network level. So if you are actually the network of schools, let's say in your schools, in your compare that with each school also individually. We will give you another example from that. Then we have a district level also. In India case, it could be a city, it could be a state. We can do that also. So just one state that participates by themselves and want to see how that is compared internationally. And finally, we also work in a group analysis. So in Thailand, we will give you an example of a study done at a specific group of disadvantaged students in order to study equity issues. So let's start with the first example. It is Brazil. We started in Brazil in 2018. It was really now since ages ago. We started modestly with only 46 schools. You know, huge country Brazil, only 46 schools. It was really, it was laughable, I can imagine. But however, we started with this NGO who wanted to learn more about one region, Sobral region in Brazil, and they wanted to know, they had their students there who were actually performing, who were disadvantaged students, but were performing very well. And they wanted to have Visa for Schools data. Thinking this would be fine, they didn't closing the case. But actually, when the other schools saw this, the data of the 46, they started to be more and more interested. So that's why now the demand is really growing in Brazil. This gives us hope that the schools actually really see the value of the project to participate. The next example is at the network level. So I was mentioning that you can participate as a network also in the Visa for Schools. The case of European Schools Network is quite interesting. You can see it as a small network. We are there of our numbers, only 13 schools. It's really not a big number, but however, they are present in 6 different countries. More than 27, I think, languages which are taught in these only 30 schools. So you can imagine that it is an education system which is quite unique and quite complex. And they joined the project. They are super performers. Those students have absolutely amazing academic results. They are tested in their first language and the second language also. And in the second language, they are outperforming most of the countries around the world. So they are really impressive case. And they reached to us in OECD and they said, like, we want to participate because we know that they are super well, but we want to compare this. I mean, what does it mean that they are super good? We need some benchmark, some number which says that how good they are compared to the international scale. So they participated with that and we showed the results and they were all happy with the outcomes in mathematics, reading and science. But when they read their report, they found out that on the international scale, their students' life satisfaction is actually very low. So when they received the report, they were actually not happy. Their students were outperforming, had amazing results, but the students were not satisfied. They had life satisfaction index was much lower than in the rest of started thinking now of implying different policies in order to improve life satisfaction of their students. So they already came to us that they want to test again in 2025, because now this was a diagnostic, they saw where they are, and now they want to improve. So this is their starting point, and now they want to put some practices in practice, to improve this life satisfaction of their students, while at the same time maintaining excellence in outcomes in mathematics, reading, and science. So we will see in 25, I will be back and tell you how did they do, and did their life satisfaction improve. Another example is the USA. USA is our longest serving country. We started in 2012 together, so you can imagine this is a long journey that we are in. And now they are participating. There is Gwinnett County who is there with us all these years and who use PISA for Schools actually as a monitoring tool. They participate over 7 years and follow what is happening in their schools over 7 years. So they have rich longitudinal data also. They have over the time developed very strong capacities in analyzing their own data, in understanding in details what is happening, what are we measuring, what are the skills measured, what are the skills that they need to improve. So they're really amazing example of building capacity through the data. And actually we learn a lot from them now. The last example that I will give you today is Thailand. Thailand is the country who joined us this 2020 and now signing actually just now for 2023 again. This is the country that joined us with a very clear idea. They want to study the students who are part of their who received the bursary. So they are the students from very disadvantaged background, and they wanted to study how do these students fit in the national context. And then so we did a specific report only on that, explaining, going into details and studying their students who are from this disadvantaged background, but however performing well. Following this, they started with this very clear idea, but then when they received the data, so not only school report, when you participate in PISA for schools, you don't get only report, you also get the data. So they started analyzing this data, and they found out many interesting information about social-emotional skills. So now they are actually pioneers in the PISA for schools. We're doing a lot of sophisticated data analysis on social-emotional skills. They are very much interested how does student performance relate to optimism. If students who are more optimistic score better or not. And then try to understand all this background between social-emotional skills and the performance of students. So as this is just basically summing up the examples I gave you before, we are providing also not only school reports for all schools, but also tailored report for those who are interested in, for example, network level analysis, or those who are interested in studying a specific topic. Finally, as we mentioned at the beginning, PISA for schools is not only to understand the data and participate in this global community of educators. By participating in PISA for schools, you have automatically access to this online community of educators, which is like a platform in which every school that participated in the project receives a PIN and login, and then they join this community and exchange practices with other educators around the world. We have nice examples of a Brazilian teacher complaining that in my schools I had this problem, and then you have Portuguese, another teacher replying, yes, I had similar problem, I did this, it didn't work, this didn't work. So this is really amazing learning opportunity from everyone to exchange, to compare, and while at the same time having the same standardized data on which you can compare it. Then also, as from the OECD part, we are providing you, every school that participates in the project will have a webinar organized by us from Paris, so we can come so often here. But that is a webinar in which we, actually Nate, who is responsible for this work and doing it brilliantly well, he goes page by page of the school report and explains you what this data shows. So you're not left alone, even if you are not a data savvy, when you finish the project you will become experts in data and you will be able to interpret all these graphs and everything that is in it. So it's really, we are offering all these post-assessment services to you to help you not only to get a report and finish with show your executive summary, show this to parents and this is done. It's really not the spirit of the project. The project is here to build capacity to improve your teaching practices at the school level. And finally, there is also post-assessment workshops which are organized with educators around the world, monitored by us from the OECD. But in addition to this, Kavish will surely tell you later on more about it. There will be post-assessment activities in the country level for you only, so you don't need international experts to tell you what you have to do. You know your country, you know your context better than we do, so that all these post-assessment activities will live actually in the hands of our country partner, which in India is Excelvan. Different kinds of activities which are designed for Indian context. I would like to finish by giving you just some instructions on the communication channels so that we are all aligned. So whatever requires information about the OECD, about PISA in general, or about PISA for schools at international level, please contact Nate and me. We are here for you to help you on that. And we will put you in contact with somebody else if you don't know the answer to your question. However, anything that requires PISA for schools in India questions, so if you want to know how to sign in, if you want to know more about these workshops, then please contact Kavish and please contact the Dr. Sentin and Excelvan team. They are here to give you all the information which is required for PISA for schools participation in India. Thank you very much. We will be here all day, so don't hesitate.
That. Everyone in the room in terms of understanding on a scale of 10. How many of us are at 9 and above on PISA for schools and PISA Super.
Now I'm going to test if all these raised hands
Really mean it. So, a quick question.
for schools is for which age? Not till. It's for 15-year-olds. You're almost there.
So, you're 9 on 10, yes. So, just let me synthesize some of the important aspects quickly before we jump to the next section. So, it is different, but it's comparable to PISA. PISA for schools is only for 15-year-olds. So, on the test date, for that 1 year window, around 15-year-old, that is 15-year 2 months and 16-year 3 months, is ones who participate for the test. Most of our students in India would be 10 who will participate. It will be on one common date for the country. So, common date as in we will know which date this test is happening, and whether it's a private school or a network school or a public school system, a government school system, we are going to converge around that date, and that currently the way we are exploring it is expected to be in September. PISA for schools is not a test for students. We are getting students to give a
to our school excellence.
So we get a school report. However, we get a lot of data which we can use for walking forward in our excellence journey, and there'll be more available. Us as partners for OECD's PISA for schools in India, we would be providing you that support. In terms of some of the things, the second last slide that Tanya shared, and I'll try to use this in light of how we can benefit from this. Once the test is done, it takes a couple of months to get the report, right? Because across the country in India, we'll have certain number of schools who are going to participate in the first cycle in 2023. And then it takes some time, and I think some perspective you would have got from Nate's presentation as well. And after that, we look at 3 broad kind of interventions or support to benefit out of the PISA for schools. One, we don't want us as educators and teachers to get overwhelmed with data. We need to pick what is relevant for us and convert them into actionable strategies and practices that we can take back in our classroom. Nate just showed us a couple of graphs. There will be so much more, but we will use that and convert them into actionable strategies and practices for us. So that is one intervention which is necessary. Second is, we will have access to all the global content as part of this community in terms of learning content as educators, as teachers, workshops that they are hosting. On top of it, one, to ensure we can pull out the right sessions out of that ocean of content from globally to bring it to us in terms of what is relevant for us. While you'll have access to all of it, but still we will help in figuring out what is the right content that we can use from there. Second, we also would be creating specific training intervention for us to benefit from it. Like getting from other cities as well is test item creation. We all continuously hold tests in our schools, whether it is ongoing unit tests, monthly tests, summative, whichever tests that we keep doing. If through PISA for schools experience, can we as a team be trained how to create the right kind of test items for us?
That's one example of an intervention.
And third, so just to one is for us to use data effectively.
Out of it. 2, post-test training intervention. One example I gave you of that.
And 3, the community. So in the first year, we may have a limitation in terms of capacity that we can take, around 200 schools from the country, and there will be a community of these 200 schools to come.
Because there will be certain excellence available on the table on the left, some excellence available with a school with the table on the right. We don't need to recreate everything. We can collaborate and exchange these ideas across the community. I'm not talking about
exchanging team members. I'm talking about exchanging ideas. So that's how we are looking at the whole path from here for 2023. And just to quickly share what's the rest of the day going to look like. Now it's your time. So in the next two sections of the day, and we promise we'll close by 12:15 or so is before 12:15, it's not after 12:15. So there are two parts. One part is as part of the School Excellence Yatra, because we have such incredible experienced educators with us, we want to make sure that we bring together combined wisdom of what the country and the school system needs for us to be on the top of the charts. Assessment is one part, but what else do we need? So we are going to do some brainstorming together. It will be a guided process. So if some of you need tea, coffee, feel free, ask for it. But it's going to be a process here for the next 45 minutes. Second, at the end of it, Dr. Senthil and we together will look at contextualizing the whole thing in terms of, in light of the current NEP 2020, all the new regulatory reforms. Is it about just compliance or is it also about excellence?
End with contextualizing PISA for schools from an Indian perspective. And I know a lot of people missed attending these roundtables, this yatra in the 4 cities that we've done in the last 4 days. We are also live today
On various social media handles. And I'm just telling the live audience right now that we are going to switch off the live telecast for about 45 minutes because this brainstorming can't happen with the live members. So after 45 minutes, they can dial back in for the concluding session of contextualization. So thank you for dialing in from there, and we'll be back in this room.